Josh Brown, Sony's State of Play has leaked. Are you excited?
Of course I am. We've just had the Xbox One, and now it's time for Sony to hopefully retort, as it were.
Tantalize you with something of a poem that Xbox Era's Nick Baker's put out there. It reminded me of the Blue Point Studios poem from a few years ago, where they talked about, they tried to tease like Metal Gear and Castlevania and things like that. None of them came true, but at the time it was a style of writing that I feel like Nick Baker is channeling here, and we'll get to all the games that are teased here. There's quite a lot, but the actual quote itself from Nick Baker says, on the 31st, brackets roughly, Ronins will rise, we'll die stranded, have a rebirth, and Kojima will fulfill his dream. Sonic will live in the shadow of his generation, while the hills will remain silent until the dawn, when you'll need to catch the metro. Just don't be a Judas about it.
I had to catch the metro this morning to get in the office, funnily enough. Scott, what does this mean? Can you pass this for me? Oh my God.
So the thing is, shout out over on Twitter/X, RandAl419 deciphered this tweet and started picking apart the various games that are teased here, and some of them are more clear than others, but we're going to go one by one here, and we'll get to the more tantalizing stuff, which is potentially some sort of Sonic Generations remaster or something involving Shadow the Hedgehog. Calm yourself.
That's the tantalizing stuff out of all that. That's your takeaway, is it?
Yes, you're going to put Shadow, sorry, I'm really high. If you're going to put Shadow in Sonic Generations, the best Sonic game.
If it's not a Shadow the Hedgehog remake, I'm not interested.
Oh, but imagine if they did that.
It could do it.
Oh my God, on like Unreal 5. Make it all really, really realistic. So obviously we've got Rise of the Ronin in here. I would say one of the most anticipated Sony exclusives, or PlayStation exclusives, of the coming months. There's not that much more necessarily to break down. It just implies that the show's going to be opening with that, or at least it's going to be in there. Quick thoughts on the old Rise of the Ronin?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when it was first announced last year, and we did a bit of a news and a bit of a podcast on it, and I thought like it looked like it had loads of potential, but there was something about it that was being held back for me. I thought it looked a little bit janky. And then at the weekend, I actually brushed up on a bunch of trailers I missed last year, and one of them was from Rise of the Ronin, and I have eaten my words. I had a big meal full of word salad because that thing looks silky smooth. It looks incredible. Gorgeous, I can't wait to play it.
It feels like if you took sort of Ghost of Tsushima and Sekiro, in terms of like Eastern settings and Eastern combat and sword-based combat, and then just added the more acrobatic flair of, I don't know, something like a Ninja Gaiden or a Devil May Cry or whatever. It speaks my language. I love it. I can't wait for this thing. Death Stranding 2, another one that's obviously been mentioned quite a lot. We've already seen little teaser trailers for it. Did you see, it would have been when you were away last week, have you seen the leaked name for Death Stranding 2?
Oh, it's like on the beach or something like that?
Death Stranding 2 on the beach. Just on the buses, on the beach. Just, what are we doing? But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll get to something else that obviously the whole Kojima fulfills his dream thing. We'll get there in a bit. Yeah. But Death Stranding 2, where you are?
Death Stranding 2, I keep forgetting that it's actually happening. Yeah. You know, again, we saw that reveal trailer for what feels like a few years ago now. I think it was the Game Awards 2022, perhaps?
I think so.
Don't quote me on that. But I want to see more from it. I hope it releases this year. I hope it's a big Sony, obviously not first party, but marquee title for the PlayStation 5. You know I love Death Stranding.
I do.
You know
I love Death Stranding.
I even think the story is excellent. Despite how mad it gets at the end, I would have just called it Death Stranding 2 Princess Beach. That's all I would have gone for.
We're doing this again.
Into the memes. No, man. Like that thing, playing through the director's cut especially, I didn't know if it would hold up a second time through because my first time through was so impactful. I never really played anything like that before. I didn't even know if I was going to like its mechanics, but they clicked with me, and then I realized just how much they loved them on a second time through, where I was kind of mastering the game rather than just learning it.
Yeah.
So that made me realize that this is actually a franchise I want to see continue, because I think that gameplay loop can continue to evolve and change and get its tenterhooks in me once again.
It's one of those things, one of those sequels where I can't wait to see what else he's come up with. Because even in the director's cut, like obviously the whole idea of just delivering packages, delivering items, fetch quest the game kind of thing. But for whatever reason, it became so addictive and so easy to play, and you didn't realize how many hours you were spending doing that. Yeah, and then the director's cut was like, what if you had stunt ramps, and what if you had little droids that could help you move packages and everything, and building out the network of the delivery service. And I'm just curious what other mad gameplay ideas Kojima has, because he's largely overlooked as a gameplay innovator. Obviously, there'll be the wider team of people that are helping him, but he's nearly always held up as a narrative guy or a crazy character guy or whatever. But it's easy to overlook how well Metal Gear Solid 5 played and how well Death Stranding plays. And I'm looking forward to something that is ostensibly gameplay first, but still has the mad Kojima stuff in there.
Hard agree, man. Like, yeah, I used to always think of the first 4 Metal Gear Solid mainline games as not being nothing that extraordinary from a gameplay perspective. Like, I played them over and over again, but I was there for the story, I was there for the environments, the characters and whatnot. And then, like you said, with the development of the Fox engine and MGS5 in particular, I think that team just hit a whole new level. And of course, Death Stranding 1 wasn't on that engine, but they used Guerrilla's Decima engine to great effect. It felt great because probably Horizon felt great as well, And they just managed to create a set of mechanics that, while not for everyone, admittedly, if you click with them, you click with them in the way that you mentioned. Like, I love games that put you just in a zone where it's all you're thinking about. And like you mentioned, like the time just drifts away from you and suddenly you've spent 8 hours delivering things across a world. And yet it's felt as, impactful and as tense as a shootout in Gears of War or Resident Evil or something.
I remember thinking after Metal Gear Solid 5 that it was one of the only games that I wish had DLC. Like, I just wish you added just more mission packs, just give me the most base stuff. I just wanted more of that game. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth obviously directly teased as well. We're not going to spend that much time on that necessarily, and we will talk about it more on the upcoming podcast that we're about to do. Go subscribe to the What Culture Gaming podcast, and where we'll dive into that stuff. We're going to do a whole February preview thing. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where you at?
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII Remake was the game that got me into Final Fantasy as an entire series. I thought it had room for a lot of improvement, which I'm hoping is implemented in this sequel. I like, without spoilers, where the story left off at the end of that original game, because I don't have that same, perhaps, entrenchment in the original lore or story or whatever. So this is going to sound incredibly religious if you are Scott Tilford or anyone who played Final Fantasy VII back in the day, but this is my Final Fantasy VII, and I think that's fine. There are 2 now, but this is the one that I'm going to.
I'm just glad you're getting some Final Fantasy VII up in you, because you were going to play the PS1 one years ago, and I knew he never was. Now he's going to play this one.
It was a big lie.
It was a bit, but at least at this point you'll still get, the tales of Cloud and Aerith and everybody else. I think this story we're about to see just how off the rails it's going to go. It's very much off the rails at the end of the initial remake from 2020. Yeah. They kind of bring it back, but the way the marketing's gone and the way the key art is, where they're just showing Zack and everything, I have no idea how you even attempt to tell the same story at this point. Yeah. I don't even think they are anymore. So I am very curious what this middle installment is.
Me too, man. And honestly, just from a gameplay perspective as well, we talked at length last year about Final Fantasy 16, which I thought had some epic highs. But in terms of combat systems, some would say, subscribe to the What Culture Gaming podcast, please. In terms of combat systems, I actually found myself preferring Final Fantasy 7 remakes, just the ability to switch around the party and play a little bit more tactically. I know you can do that in 16, but for whatever reason, even though I had trouble getting into 7 Remake's combat system, by the end of the game, I was really enjoying it. I was really looking forward to those combat encounters, so I'm interested to see how they've evolved that element, because to be honest, I've actually kind of kept away from a bunch of the trailers that have showcased any gameplay, so it's kind of going to be a surprise to me.
Yeah, man, they've got loads of team-up moves and stuff, but yeah, by the end of it, it was it's the best combat system they've ever made. Ooh. Like, I love 16's combat, but 7 does have the party switching thing, and I'm looking forward to how much they flesh that stuff out. Shout out to Final Fantasy VII Remakes, the 2021, the hard mode that you unlock. That game is like has a phenomenal hard mode where you meet at your MP based on chapter, so you've got to think about when you want to use spells. It's cool. Next thing down is Kojima fulfilling his dream, which is a quote from the poem, or whatever you want to call it, from Nick Baker. But you mentioned when we put in the notes together, the idea of like, why separate this if Kojima fulfilling his dream is Death Stranding? Does Kojima have something else in the works? Dude's been teasing a lot of Metal Gear stuff. There was a Metal Gear level ostensibly in the Death Stranding director's cut. What's his dream?
This is pure speculation on my behalf, because I don't know why you would do this little poem and, like you said, mention a Kojima-related thing twice. You've already teased Death Stranding, and then to bring him up again, I don't think that happens with any of the other games that are teased in that way. So it makes me think, are there multiple Kojima projects that are going to be shown off? To me, fulfilling his dream, this is pie-in-the-sky speculation. That is Silent Hills, right? That is Silent Hills. Woo-hoo. It's something to do with that. It's fulfilling a dream that he had back in 2014, 10 years ago, might I add. And I don't think it'll happen, but I'll like to speculate that it might, because I don't know why you would say that twice, other than to just emphasize that Death Stranding 2 is finally happening.
No, man, to be fair, like right now where Sony are at, we don't have any upcoming first-party stuff. They're in that weird limbo. Well, we do in terms of the live servicey things. Like we have Helldivers 2 and Foam Stars, that's a Square Enix game, but we have that weird, all the conversations that are going to come on with their push into live service stuff that's kind of, I would already argue is on the rocks. You've got Jim Ryan stepping down that whole conversation on what the potential future of PlayStation was going to be, and now it's not necessarily. So I think it would make the most sense for them to do a wish fulfillment announcement thing. They haven't done one in a while since the likes of like Shenmue 3, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, or The Last Guardian or something, but they could just do that and be like, hey, by the way, PT, we've actually still got PT.
Yeah.
And we're still doing Silent Hills. Because arguably, Konami could do with the win on the Silent Hill front because the Silent Hill 2 remake has been received pretty badly.
Yeah.
So there's potential there, I guess, for them to shake hands.
Look, don't get me wrong. I know there's like a 1% chance of this. This is definitely the flimsiest thing on this list, I reckon, because it's probably like the only one that's my speculation purely. But that's what they're for, man. And yeah, I feel like with it being the 10-year anniversary, maybe something, maybe not a full game, maybe just like the demo coming back. You know, actually having that be available would be a win for me because I still own my original PlayStation 4 that I won't sell a trade in because it's got PT installed. And if I ever want to go back and play it, maybe now for the 10-year anniversary, I have to boot that old dusty boy back up, see if it still works. Yeah, they removed it from sale because they said it was indicative of a project they weren't doing anymore. But so if it does come back, that would then very much point at something else. The next thing down is Sonic will live in the shadow of his generation, which Twitter user Randall4 said that they think it points to a Sonic Generations remaster. But you were saying, like, we were both saying the idea of Shadow being involved. Why even mention Shadow? Yeah. You've also got in here that potentially it's Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC being mentioned. Well, I'm just going mad with this.
Well, you might as well, but Shadow of the Erdtree, that was just rated or it was listed on some trademark site or something very recently. I remember seeing a headline for that it had an update anyway on some legal site. So it's out there. Like that's about ready to be announced. Anyway, if you're going to do Sonic Generations 2 though, and you're going to put Shadow in it, and you're going to give him the little guns, and he sort of plays like Samus, where you can sort of you can run and jump Sonic style with the projectiles. That's good.
I shouldn't admit this online in any form, to be honest, because now you're going to lose all respect for me. What is Sonic Generations, Scott? And why would it be good to have it back or have a sequel and have Shadow involved? Please tell me more.
Sonic Generations is nothing less than the best Sonic game that isn't Sonic Mania after Sonic 2. It's the one where they did this timeline jumping thing where you had longer, taller Sonic, the rebooted Sonic from 2006, New Age Sonic, met original classic short, stumpy Sonic, and then you got to play both types of Sonic. So you had the over shoulder, like the sprinting over, like treasure dash style.
That's
Sonic.
Cool, yeah.
But then you also had levels that were side scrolly where you played as classic Sonic. You had, they crossed over in terms of the iconic levels. You had stuff from Sonic Adventure, which was like obviously the 3D one that was on the Dreamcast, reimagined as like an old school Sonic level where you're playing as classic Sonic. It was phenomenal. The music's incredible in Generations. The level design's great. Sonic Generations is by far, I would say, the best one that isn't Sonic Mania, that isn't made by Christian Whitehead. It rules. And so that is like, has the fan love behind it because it's two sides of Sonic. And it's still, right now it's available on, it's backwards compatible on Xbox because I went through it again in the pandemic and it plays beautifully. It still plays really, really well. And I think if you were gonna upscale one, you could do that. They remastered Sonic Colors last year or the year before. So they're on a bit of a remaster spree, and obviously Sonic's still doing really well. Like Sonic Frontiers did really, really well. The other one, Sonic Superstars, kind of stunk. They tried to do like a multiplayer thing with that. And it was terrible. Like, I really hated Superstars. So it's maybe they do the fan thing.
I was getting this mixed up. I thought Sonic Generations was the collection that they released last year with like the original games. Origins. That's where I was confused because I thought, why are they doing it again? No, that makes sense. I'm actually really interested in that. You know, if they throw in Shadow as well, if they bundle in a remaster of Shadow the Hedgehog, and if they add in that blue freak from the first Sonic trailer for the movie, if you make him playable alongside the other two Sonic and do like a Spider-Man No Way Home thing, then I'd maybe play it.
It's a weird little rat mouse Sonic. He was in the Chipmunks movie where he's at like a fan convention or something. Yeah, they should just steer into it. I guess right now when you think about where 10 people care about this, but like I say that, and then there's always millions of Sonic fans that like reach out. And
James Dowse is somewhere listening. He's listening. He's agreeing.
Somewhere he just looked up and looked around for a bit. But I feel like they could do with updating us on what's happening with the next Sonic. Like there's always some sort of announcement. They have the movie coming up, like Sonic 3. There are things to cash in on or get something out there alongside. But yeah, I guess we'll see. The phrasing, I'm not going to spend much longer on Sonic, but the phrasing of Sonic will live in the shadow of his generation feels like you could, it feels more like it is directly connoting Sonic Generations. Like the idea of that being a Shadow remake, I'll faint if they do a Shadow remake.
It's
not in a
never
good
happening.
way. I'll just be like, what are we doing? Like, this is the end of the world. Hit the missiles. Like, we're done. Just we might as well end it. Silent Hill 2, quickly mentioned that before. I don't feel like the general response to Silent Hill 2 has been very strong. I feel like you might as well do a gameplay video at this point, and maybe you can turn some people around. The general cutscene direction and the approach the Bloober team's taken to just sort of front-loading the messaging and take away thematics of that game didn't really go down well with the fans. I'm not that bothered about it after waiting years for a Silent Hill 2 remake. It's fine, but I don't know where you're at.
I wish it came alongside Silent Hill 2, the original, being more readily available. I know there were the HD remasters, which I think is still available on Xbox backwards compatibility. Yep. You might even be able to play it on PlayStation Now streamed, but I think if this remake came along and did something different alongside the ability to replay the original in high definition, just touched up a touch, I think it would be more or better received. I'm still looking forward to this more as a curio. When it was first announced, I thought Silent Hill 2's back, baby. It's going to be on the level of Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 4. I've since tempered my expectations, but I'm still looking forward to it. And like, I don't really mind them changing stuff as long as those changes don't then replace the original in terms of it being readily available, or that being the Silent Hill 2 that people come to remember.
I'm just curious how they handle it at this point. I think it would go a long way to just show it running and just show what the gameplay is like, and let people do their direct comparisons online and justify itself a little bit more. The next thing down is the Until Dawn remaster. We know this is coming anyway. There was a version of Until Dawn apparently has been in the works for over a year or so. I forget the specific website that first mentioned that, but we know that there's an Until Dawn movie coming out, so it makes sense to have some new version of this alongside it. We're seeing Sony do that a lot, either with Last of Us Part 1 alongside the HBO show, or just making sure that there's some sort of game component out there as well. Me and you love Until Dawn.
We do.
It's one of the best PlayStation exclusives ever, and I love it.
I agree. Yeah. But the thing is, I've played it to death. I've played Until Dawn so many times over the years that it's one of those games, like sometimes when you overwatch movies, I can't go back to it because I know every beat so well. And it's not that I don't enjoy it, but as a game, I'm thinking what would get me to buy a remake. So I want to see how much of an overhaul it is. Is it just a touch-up for PlayStation 5 and PC, like I think it was rumored? That's cool to have, but are they going to add anything in to give people a reason to play it again rather than just re-experience this game that's already available? I would love, again, pie in the sky dream. I don't think they're going to do this, but with the movie that's been announced, you've got to get, I don't know if they've confirmed this, but you've got to get the characters, the actors back, or at least some of them.
You'd think so.
If they're doing that, I would like to see, maybe a few more scenes added to the main game. Do a Until Dawn director's cut that remasters and also adds and maybe gives you a few new opportunities, or even if it's just a couple new gameplay bits or fates for the characters. I think that would be a nice incentive to return, but if they do just want to remaster it, it's kind of overdue a remaster in a way, especially alongside something like The Quarry, which looks amazing. So it's a win-win. I just like that it's still around and it's love from people like you, Scott.
Totally, man. Well, we've championed it for 9 years now. But yeah, I feel like you could upscale the facial animation. You could sort of like go down that route. Obviously, Hayden Panettiere and Rami Malek went massive across the last few years, and this is one of their earliest roles, other than Hayden Panettiere being in like Heroes or something. But I still feel like why not? Like, they might as well lend themselves to it if they're up for it again, or whatever. That'd be a nice thing to see. And yeah, I'm curious how much that crosses over into the movie as well. But Until Dawn's just a really cool game.
Just do a sequel. Do a proper sequel. I know you've got the Dark Pictures. I know you got The Quarry, but like...
Oh, I think they'd mess it up.
Do you think?
Until Dawn's the one time they nailed it.
I forgot you didn't like The Quarry. I love The Quarry so much.
Keep it away from me.
All right, do The Quarry 2 instead.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with this stuff. The next one down is a Metro game. Apparently, there's a fully fledged Metro game. There's rumored to be a VR title coming to PSVR 2. And there's also a mainline game in development, according to Insider Gaming, with the VR game being made by Vertigo Games. I couldn't care less about VR. How do you spell it? But what do you think?
Which is spell it. Very nice. Hey. I love it, Scott. That comes as a surprise, probably. Yeah, it's strange. I was looking at the rumors surrounding this because people were saying like Vertigo Games, and I thought, why Vertigo Games? And then I actually saw someone on the virtual reality subreddit, I think, put together a little explainer as to why they think this is the studio, because they've got a relationship with Deep Silver. One of their games was an unannounced title in a worldwide franchise, and now bundled in with this, it seems like the next game is going to be a VR game, but thankfully not made by, I think it's 4A Games who do the mainline series. So hopefully we're getting, a regular single-player, story-driven Metro game that is available on consoles. But alongside that, this cool thing that may be exclusive to PSVR 2. And I think PSVR 2 is a really good bit of kit, as I've mentioned so many times, but it is in need of future games. And it's more importantly in need of exclusives. So if this turns out to be a PSVR 2 exclusive, I think that would give me a reason to continue to get that thing out of its box and continue playing throughout this year, because that would be a big marquee title. And I've already forgotten the developer's name, even though I just mentioned it. They made good titles in the past, in the VR space. I think they did Arizona Sunshine, I want to say, which was really well received, and that sequel came out recently. The point is, I'm rambling. I'm in for it. I like it. I'll be eagerly tuning in to see what that looks like.
I'm curious with this. I feel like the Metro franchise, like me and you loved Exodus, but I don't feel like that blew up as much as, when it was initially shown off as a Series X game. Like when they debuted the Series X, they showed off Metro as a way of saying, look how much this thing can do. And like I said, Exodus was a great game. It's just that I feel like the Metro series deserves to be higher. Like it has that literary background, it has the lore, and like you have 3 main games so far. And maybe this is the thing that pushes them over. It'd be interesting if it is just a VR game that they end up showing off. I would hope it's the next main installment, and I hope they've been able to get more used to the next gen tech a little bit, because there were some rough around the edges parts of Exodus in terms of like the animations and things, but there's so much promise in that thing. There's such a feel to it, and I feel like everyone is so starved of, or they're not, they come across as being starved of apocalyptic fiction, because anything that is like The Walking Dead or The Last of Us gets ravenously consumed, even though to me I feel like zombie stuff is everywhere, and I know that there's the whole argument Days Gone's not zombies and Last of Us it's not zombies and whatever, but I still feel like enough of the aesthetic of Metro can tap into that. And blow up way more.
With Exodus as well being the 3rd game of the series, that didn't completely transform the visual aesthetic of the previous 2 games, but the previous 2 games were much more concerned with the underground gameplay, the Metro exploring the subway systems, whereas in Exodus you spent much more time on the actual surface, in those irradiated wastes, fighting creatures and stuff, and that for me shook things up in an interesting way. It made the environments that a little bit more diverse, had a bit more variety to them. So I thought they were onto a real winner with that. I don't know what diehard fans think of that move, but for me it was the kind of freshening up it needed to hopefully appeal to a bigger audience, because I fully agree with you as a lover of all 3 of those games so far. I think it deserves more plaudits.
Definitely. Last thing is Judas, which is Ken Levine's game. He's working with Ghost Street Games. It's a studio that he founded after he left Irrational after BioShock Infinite. 11 years in the making. Like, this thing's been teased. If we finally got a bit of footage of it last year, and it kind of just looks like another BioShock. But I guess you might as well play to your strengths to some degree. That's probably what people are expecting. The big deal with this game, and apparently the reason it's taken so long to come together, is because it has some sort of procedural plot generation, some sort of unique way of telling a story that apparently has taken this long to get right. And I, for the most part, trust Levine to do that. I wasn't a huge fan of Infinite, especially at the very, very end. I thought it just was all over the place. But I like auteurs. I like the idea of auteurs in gaming, and I miss that era. When it was the Levines, the Kojimas, the Cliff Blazinskis, whoever. And I'm just curious, like that idea of someone returning after this long, like after a decade plus. And then, is it too close to BioShock, or is it, what is he doing here that feels like, or could feel like, it justifies the time away? But where you at on the old Judas?
I'm tentatively excited for it. Like you, Ken Levine's previous games never did me wrong. I really loved BioShock Infinite at the time. Not being back to it, don't know how it holds up, but at the time, I was really into it. Obviously, I loved BioShock 1, and it wasn't the same team, but BioShock 2 is an underrated gem. So I've been interested to see what he can do outside of that franchise. And the initial trailer for Judas, which I think was actually, I think it was the Game Awards 2022. That was the last one I saw.
Right.
Anyway, I don't know if there's had any footage since then, but I've not even seen this game since that. And I had the same reaction of, it actually looks like a Ken Levine game. I thought this would be maybe more of a departure. Maybe he'd have done something different, but, play to your strengths and all that. I'm here for it. I'm interested to see more. I don't think it's an instant sell. I think after so long away, you kind of need to claw some of that, not respect, but trust and confidence back, because the gaming landscape has changed so much since BioShock Infinite. And I'm just eager to see more. How does it play? Is this procedural narration in there to a big degree? How's that going to affect the story? A lot of questions, but a lot of intriguing questions.
Yeah, and you'd assume this far into development that you would assume they have a lot to show. Like, it's worth saying that Take-Two have said that it'll be out this fiscal year, which you mentioned wraps wraps up March 2025.
Yeah.
So it could still be a whole other year away, but I just feel like it's been so long. And depending on the scale of the game, I guess it is that core mechanic thing that's taken so long to get right. There was a Jason Schreier write-up, I think it was when he was still with Kotaku, saying that approach to game design, the fact that Levine kind of knows what he wants, but not like to the point where he knows exactly how to get there, has led to a lot of revisions and a lot of going back and forward on it. But hopefully it pays off. Like I will cherish and champion ambition in the gaming industry in a sea of really safe stuff at the top level. So the amount of money behind this and the fact it's still 2K, you would hope that it pays off.
I'd agree. You know, I'm looking forward to pretty much every single game that has been mentioned here. I think if they all do turn up, that'll be an excellent state of play. But Judas is the most intriguing in a way because it's a big new IP, and it feels like it's been ages since we've had a big new AAA IP of this caliber where it's like, yeah, like you said, a creator coming back and doing something new with a new world rather than just another sequel, which I'm sure would have been good as well. But yeah, I like the freshness of it.
Well, we're still getting BioShock 4 as well. That's still being made by whatever that other team is that 2K has, and it's like that's been detailed a few times.
Cloudbuster, I want to say. Could be wrong that though.
Cloud Emporium or something. It's something like that. But yeah, there's still apparently a BioShock 4 out there somewhere as well. And so I guess the way that they're going to approach the marketing for that is to try and differentiate the two, depending on how much DNA in Judas is the same.
What comes out first? Let's end the video on a little prediction. What comes out first, BioShock 4 or Grand Theft Auto 6?
Oh my God. BioShock 4.
You reckon?
Yeah, because I think it's been in development for a while. There was a version of it that leaked a few years ago in terms of the plot details. Like it was based on A Tale of Two Cities, and it was these two cities on top of each other.
Yes.
I think a follow-up to that said that whole idea got rebooted. So I don't know, but I just feel like you have more of a template to... I don't know. I was going to say you have more of a template to go off. You have GTA, but you're making the GTA without the founders and the original brains that did GTA 5. So I'm going to say BioShock still.
Are you really? That's see, back in like 2020, I remember continually doing videos saying BioShock 4's got to be next year. They've announced it. They said it's in development. It's got to be coming soon. And every year I've been wrong. So at this point, I'll take BioShock 4 if it comes out in 2030. It's becoming the Metroid Prime 4 to me because I just think, what is going on? Why did you even announce this so early? You didn't have to.
Yeah, that's very true.